All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. You know, as a talk show host, I'm really supposed to be on top of things that will affect us, and I'm supposed to be astute when it comes to things that could affect us. And there's one area, and I really try to be, and if not, then we try to have guests on who are, and I guess that's the example we're about to have. I've never been very good at understanding what caused the Great Depression. We've had so many stories from people who said that their great-grandfathers went through the Depression, or they went through it and they sold hot dogs, and for somehow they did well, or they started their empire started during the worst days that were around. But I never really understood a whole lot about it. 86 pages in, I'm starting to. And the book I'm 86 pages into is the book we're going to talk about right now. It's called Understanding the Great Depression and Failures of Modern Economic Policy. Not a romantic title, Robin. That's not a romantic title.
No.
But I'm telling you, if you understand it and you're a congressman, well, then good for you. If you don't understand it and you're a congressman, you need to read the book. And if you don't understand it and you're just a normal citizen like the rest of us, then we need to still read the book and then write letters to our congressman, because I think they don't get it either. I think they're in a worse predicament than me.
I think so.
And in other words, I have to sometimes pretend I know things, or fake that I know things, or just be quiet and let other people say things. But the truth is, I think the more we know about this particular topic, the better off we will be as a nation. And I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. I think Dan Blatt has done an amazing thing. He's on the phone right now. He is an attorney. He is the publisher and author of Futurecast's online magazine. He was the financial, economic, legal, and political columnist for the Miami Review. He was a special advisor to the Congressional Statutory Studies Group. He has over 50 years of experience in finance, law, media, you name it. You got to read this one, and trust me, it's not easy. Understanding the Great Depression and Failures of Modern Economic Policy. It's a little bit over my head, Dan, but good morning, sir. Thank you it's an honor to have you on.
Good morning. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin, and thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I don't think I had a teacher in school that really explained this the way you do.
Well, that's because our academic community has been more interested in propagandizing about the Great Depression than in actually explaining it.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting thing to say. Yeah, so in other words, they want to cover their tracks, or they want to make it sugar-coated, or what?
If you have an ideological agenda that has to do with economics, then you're always likely to use the Great Depression as a scare tactic. Oh, you got to enact my agenda, or we're going to have another Great Depression.
Ah, okay. So, by understanding it, let me ask you one question before I ask that question. And I don't even know where that question was going. Was everybody in this country, anyway, or in the world, affected by the Great Depression?
Well, I mean, everybody who was involved in the economic system. There were countries that simply were outside the economic system of the world. Otherwise, pretty much everybody was involved. It was a worldwide effect because one of the essential aspects that caused the Great Depression was a trade war that the United States started in 1922 with the Fordney-McCumber tariff. You had all of these nations from Europe who had just gotten finished fighting World War I. They were very deeply in debt. They had borrowed from us. They had to get dollars to service their debts. And we told them, you're not going to have access to our markets to earn those dollars. That made life very difficult for them.
And what was the logic behind denying them access?
Well, you have very powerful political interests, especially in the agricultural sector, that really suffered from the ups and downs of World War I. They expanded to feed the world during the war. There was a lot of new farmers that came on board when prices were high during the war.
Right.
But Europe started to have its own crops again by 1919, 1920, and so all the prices took a tremendous dive. And they didn't like that, so they right away they sought protection from their congressmen, who were only too glad to provide the protection.
So why did we do so well 10 years after World War II when we did so horribly 10 years after World War I?
That's a very good question, and the reason is that after World War II, we started opening up the international markets. We started globalizing. It was a long process, but we permitted both the Allies and even Germany and the Axis countries to do business in our markets, to produce goods and services that they could sell to us, so they could earn what they needed to pay off their debts and start to recover. And our Marshall Plan helped, but we started to facilitate. What's necessary is that governments facilitate these markets. Capitalism is built on government activities that facilitate the markets. And having experienced the Great Depression, for once we wisely concentrated on facilitating markets instead of obstructing them.
When the Great Depression ended, how long after that was welfare put into existence instead of trying to create more jobs?
Well, we started that during the New Deal with Social Security and also guaranteeing small deposits at banks and so forth. And but the current welfare program started during the Lyndon Johnson years, his Great Society programs, and of course it's always nice for politicians to give benefits from the public treasury, but if there are no cost constraints, then you're going to run into trouble. Right away, these entitlements become actuarially unsound. Whenever somebody talks about our entitlements, you must always ask them, where are the cost constraints? That's something the politicians don't like to think about, but it is a very necessary subject to talk about.
Because I don't look at Social Security as welfare. I look at it as something earned when you retire because you're paying into it, and the the employer is paying into it also.
Well, having lived my life through from the beginning of Social Security, I'm willing to admit that I've gotten in early on the thing. I've made out like a bandit. No, I did not put in as much money into Social Security as I am now taking out.
Oh.
Can I ask you this? And I always wondered about this. In order for the people to prosper, is it necessary that other people live in poverty? And I'm just always wondering, when you hear about slave labor in Asia or wherever they may be, those people manufacturing for like $1 a day, whatever, is that necessary in order for us to prosper, or is it possible for all of us to prosper?
Capitalism is not a zero-sum game. People aren't poor because other people are wealthy. Capitalism permits the new generation to come on board and build their own economic future. I know this guy Piketty treats it as a zero-sum game. Oh, because the wealthy are wealthy, we're all sinking into the morass.
Right.
But that's ridiculous. In fact, his whole book is ridiculous. For example, if you think the way Piketty thinks, then you have to ask, why weren't Vanderbilt interests dominant at the end of the 19th century? Or you can ask, why weren't Rockefeller and Carnegie interests dominant at the end of the 20th century? And is there anybody stupid enough to think that Gates interests are going to be dominant at the end of the 21st century? Of course not, because there are going to be new entrepreneurs with new products and new businesses who will simply move ahead of the wealth that is just invested and is not entrepreneurially managed.
So does that right there, the fact that the United States is set up as a capitalist country, and I mean that in a healthy way. I don't necessarily mean what do they call it, crony capitalism, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I mean in a healthy way. Do we prevent ourselves from having another depression because of that?
Well, competition is extraordinarily important, and that means competition internationally too. You cannot have another Great Depression in a globalized world. You can have other kinds of problems, you understand, as we have seen already in this 21st century, but not a Great Depression where government is actually destroying markets so that they can't recover. If you're not destroying markets, if you're facilitating markets, they have tremendous recuperative powers. When you take a look at what's happening in the economy, you always ask yourself, well, what policies, what are the government policies? Do they facilitate market mechanisms, or do they inhibit and burden them? And the government is very important to facilitate markets. You can't have a capitalist system, a competitive capitalist system, without government facilitating the markets, without institutions, private and government, without the appropriate regulations. Mm-hmm. Government has an important role to play, but does it facilitate the markets rather than just burden them?
People will say that our Federal Reserve System is not a viable entity, and they always bring up gold and the gold standard.
Yeah, well, just because you have gold doesn't prevent politicians from interfering with the gold standard. The gold standard didn't fail in the 1920s. We failed the gold standard. We refuse to play by the rules of the game. There is a business cycle under the gold standard, and it's very important because it is precisely the down periods of the business cycle that cleanse the system of the weak and the outmoded and get rid of the miscreants that always are in the system during prosperous times. And the regulators have no capacity to protect us from the miscreants, though they are always revealed during the downward parts of the business cycle. The Keynesians will not obsolete the business cycle.
The book, oh my gosh, you got to read this book. I'm a student at the least. Understanding the Great Depression and Failures of Modern Economic Policy. As I said, not a romantic title, but if you want to understand this part of our history and maybe what to write to your congressman and not be bullied by propaganda, this is a book that'll help you do that. I tried to write it in a style that facilitates speed reading and scanning, so you shouldn't become put off by the fact that it's pretty long. Yeah,
there's large parts of it that just have facts.
Yeah,
It's not boring.
I'm not speed reading it at all. But I have to reread it a lot. I'll tell you, there's a lot of stuff I have to reread. But let me ask you this: in 1992, I think Ross Perot was running for president. I think a lot of us wanted him to win because we figured this was a guy who knew economics. And we didn't know how he would handle, the wars or ethical, moral things like abortions and stuff like that. But we had a feeling he was good with economics. And I wonder if that's not the same reason we voted for Donald Trump. I'm not trying to make this a political conversation, but does the person in charge, the president, in this case, it's really Congress, not just the president, but does that person, knowing economics, serve us better, especially economically?
They are always under political pressures to give favors to their constituents. After all, that's why congressmen go to Washington, to do favors for their constituents. Unfortunately, some of the favors that people want them to do have very bad economic outcomes. People like low interest rates, but if you provide low interest rates, you've taken away the disciplines of interest rates from the credit markets, and you get increased leverage. People want to have their credit guaranteed. We have all these credit guarantees that change the credit market vigilantes into credit market enablers, and that leads down nasty roads.
So if the New Deal did not save us from the Depression, did the free marketplace? Is the free marketplace the real hero?
No, because we didn't have a free marketplace during that period. What happened was that World War II broke out in Europe. And because Europe needed the goods and services that we were producing, and the rest of the world needed stuff that they had previously been getting from Europe, our exports right away took off. In the first year of the European War, our exports increased by 35% or so, and that was the end of the Great Depression. Once our export markets started to recover, they couldn't recover before that, because we had destroyed the export markets. Something that's been destroyed can't recover.
I always hear the term, if a country needs to make money, they need to start a war. Is that fact or is that fiction?
That's gross fiction, and that's anti-capitalist propaganda of the worst kind.
Well, thank you for clearing that up.
It sounds like you would be friends with Milton Friedman.
To a certain extent, I am. Needless to say, nobody is completely in line on these subjects with anybody else. But basically, I agree that he has a lot to say that's good, and I do cover his beliefs and those of Larry Meltzer in articles in my web magazine.
When businesses are when people are becoming entrepreneurs and they want to put their businesses in the forefront of the people to make a profit, is it better to get loans to start up that business and pay it off as quickly as you can, or should the person save up the money for every kind of operating expense before putting out there in the public? Would that help?
Well, unfortunately, the heavy hand of government has dictated that you will borrow as much money as you think you can get away with, because you get all kinds of tax benefits from servicing the debts. But if you have a corporation, the dividends you pay to your backers are not tax deductible. And so dividends are more expensive than debt. Our government encourages us to leverage up. And debt capital is far more unstable. It shatters like glass, whereas equity capital is very flexible, and it can retreat and advance again. That's the kind of capital the economy needs, and that's the kind of capital people need to stay in business as the economy goes up and down. But because of our tax laws and our and other laws, we punish our entrepreneurs. We punish them with high taxes. We punish them with litigation risks and a lot of regulations. And for that reason, we are a highly indebted economy, and that makes us somewhat fragile.
Oh.
Understanding the Great Depression and Failures of Modern Economic Policy is the title of the book. The story of the heedless giant. Dan Blatt is our guest, and he's the author of the book. And it does what I did not get done in my lifetime. It explains to me something I really never quite understood. So I appreciate that. And I don't know if I'm alone in that. I'm guessing I'm not. I'm guessing there's a lot of people who maybe sort of kind of knew a little bit about it, but didn't know as much as... And obviously in the radio interview, we're not going to get it all in, so you got to get the book. Are you okay with taking phone calls, sir?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, let me do a few of these. If you would like to call in, the number is 622-9622. Good morning, you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, yes. Currently the way our country works, you can't have both a revenue tariff and an income tax. We switched over to the income tax starting in, 1915 or whatever, and so we should have been backing away from the tariff all those years. And when we went back to a high tariff, while we had instituted the income tax, that was doomed. You can have one or the other, but not both. And
well, you got to give Wilson got rid of the tariff, and that was one thing that you have to credit Wilson for. And when the Republicans came in, right away in 22, they got the tariff back in. But it wasn't so much having the income tax and the tariff as the fact that all of the major countries of Europe needed to access our market to earn the dollars with which to service their dollar debts. We were the creditor nation after World War I, and we were a debtor nation before World War I, so it didn't matter too much that we had high tariffs. But when we closed off our market to our European debtors, the situation started to fall apart.
Wow. Dan, how long did it take to write this one? This looks like you put a lot of time into this.
I've been writing about this subject now for 50 years, so you might say that it took me 50 years. But actually putting it together, these projects always take longer than you expect, 2 or 3 times. It took me about a year and a half to put together material that I thought I already had. And that's one reason why when I originally did a book like this, it didn't come out until after the credit crunch recession was over. I missed the market on that one.
Is automation going to hurt us, the American people, or is it going to help us?
That's another bogeyman. Automation always creates the possibility for new and better goods and services to be provided. You will have a much wealthier country, a much wealthier people because of the productivity increases in automation. They have been deploring automation since Marx wrote Das Kapital and was wringing his hands about all the people that were being obsoleted from the garment trades. We've had Luddites and catastrophists giving us propaganda about that for 200 years now.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so when I hear somebody on the TV saying this is going to be the next depression, I should just laugh, just figure they're wrong?
Well, as I say, you can have other problems, and I expect other problems are coming. But it won't be a Great Depression. You cannot have a Great Depression unless government is actually destroying markets. The key to understanding the Great Depression as different from other business cycles is that the markets are not just in trouble. Your government has actually destroyed the international markets, and if they're destroyed, they can't recover. So you can have other problems, but you should be able to recover from them relatively quickly as long as the markets are still in existence and your government and private institutions are facilitating market mechanisms instead of inhibiting them.
Wow. Well, thank you for being on the show. Again, I may never understand all of this, but at least it'll help out when I have a conversation with somebody. Dan Blatt, what a great book. I have a copy of the book. If you want it, call me. I'll put your name on it. The rest of us have to go buy it because this is a capitalist venture right now. I've only a few seconds. How do we buy the book? Anywhere books are sold?
Anywhere books, Amazon has it, and there's some bookstores that have it also.
Okay, all right. Dan, thank you for being on the air with us today, and thank you for writing the book.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we will be right back. This is The Source, WOCA Ocala.
96.3 FM, The Source.
Oh, Dan,
Fox
thank
News
you
Radio,
so much.
I'm Pat O'Neill. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has decided to invoke the Fifth Amendment and decline a subpoena from the Senate Intelligence Committee looking into Russia's alleged meddling in the U.S. election.
The Flynn case today seems to be the first example of how this may create roadblocks for the independent congressional investigations on both the House and Senate side, though I would emphasize those close to Flynn say that his decision not to provide these records is no confirmation or evidence of wrongdoing.
Fox's Catherine Herridge. President Trump making history in Israel, becoming the first sitting U.S. president to visit Jerusalem's Western Wall.
Previous presidents have avoided the holy site because it's in East Jerusalem, which was annexed by Israel in 1967, a move not internationally recognized. The president will meet with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas tomorrow.
Fox's Jessica Gallagher in Jerusalem. The president today meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Fox News, we report, you decide.
For me, it was the big S-Class from the 90s. Beautiful. My friend's dad had one.
The SL. All of the SLs. I've been watching those since I was a kid.
I think the 1971 SE was the first Mercedes that just blew me away.
Everyone remembers the first time they saw one, and the day they began to long for a Mercedes-Benz of their own. Well, that day may be a lot closer than you think. With a certified pre-owned Mercedes-Benz, you can experience the luxury, the unparalleled safety, the performance, and the style Mercedes-Benz is famous for at a price you can afford. Beautiful SUVs, sedans, coupes, and convertibles that are factory certified and covered by an unlimited mileage warranty for up to 3 years, so you can drive without a worry for as far as you like. And during the certified pre-owned sales event going on now through May 31st, you can receive